Express a complete thought, it kind of leaves you hanging. It's not a complete sentence. It is a fragment. So let's think about what the word fragment means in any context. I think sometimes when we think about the words we use to talk about grammar, we think they mean something like totally different. Oh, fragment, that's such a weird word, I don't know what that is. But it's not. What is a fragment? Of anything.
Parts.
It's a piece of something. So if you break a plate, you've got all these fragments, right? Would you eat off of those fragments? No, they're not whole, they're not complete. You need a complete plate. You need a complete sentence. So a fragment means a piece of a sentence, not a sentence. So that's one of the reasons why we looked at subjects and verbs first, so that we can see if those are missing. But the expressing a complete thought part gets people sometimes. So what else do you think about a fragment? When you think fragment, sentence fragments, what might you think? Incomplete. Are they short?
Yeah.
Let's see. Tell everything about myself. What do you think about my sentence? It's raining, I left my umbrella at home in the garage and turned off and decided to try it.
Doesn't mean anything.
Is it a sentence?
No.
It's not short. We've got lots of things going on there. Why is it not a sentence? Does it have a subject?
No.
No. Does it have a verb? Something doing something?
Yes.
There's some verbs. Are they the verb of the sentence? Does it express a complete thought?
No.
No, it doesn't. How about if I do this? I added something. I will say that.
You may not be the reason in the last part.
Say it again.
You may not be the reason in the last part.
So that may not, what is this last thing? Is this a complete sentence?
No. I mean, it could be.
Wait, no, it is or it isn't. Does it have a subject?
I.
Does it have a verb?
Stay.
Will stay. Okay. Does it express a complete thought? I will stay inside.
Kind of. Because we could kind
Why
of
do you
say
think
as
my
a,
complete thought? I will stay inside. It's fine.
yeah.
This is all the fragment, right? This is the complete sentence. These kind of fragments that start with a dependent word have to have a complete sentence within it for it to be complete. Let me say that out again. Say it again. I'll say it one more time. Words like because, although, when, if, which, since, all of these words, I can't read it all, I don't know why, anyway. When, I forget about when. And there's more. These words are dependent words. They're subordinating conjunctions. We'll talk about that in a sec. If you start a sentence with one of these words, you're writing a fragment. Did your teacher tell you not to start a sentence with because?
Yes.
You're in college now, you can. You get to start a sentence with because. Here's why they told you not to, though. They told you not to because you kept, not you personally, but people kept writing fragments. They kept doing that, what I did. And it's like, oh, it's so annoying. Just don't start with because, and you won't write that fragment. But, now you're in college, you can start with because as long as you add a complete sentence somewhere in there. Some of you would like to flip this. I will stay inside because it is raining and la la la, right? And that's fine too. If you feel better doing that, go ahead. But you don't have to. If you see a sentence start with because, as long as it's got a complete sentence somewhere in there, it's fine. All right? So, what happens with English is we have different kinds of clauses. And you might remember this from school. You might remember talking about dependent and independent clauses. Did you guys do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it sounds a little bit familiar.
Long time ago, though.
Long time ago. All right, well, if something is independent, again, these words don't mean anything different, really, in grammar than they do in any other sense. So what does the word independent mean? Are you independent?
Yeah, probably.
I hope so. Are you over 18? You're supposed to be independent, right? So what does that mean?
You live by yourself.
You live by yourself. You don't need anybody else to survive. Technically, right? You can get your own place, you can get a job, you can do all that stuff. You can feed yourself. You can take yourself to the doctor, whatever you need. And you have to necessarily do it well, but yeah. Independent means you don't need anything else. A complete sentence is an independent clause. It doesn't need anything else to survive as a sentence. A dependent clause, on the other hand, what does it mean to be dependent?
You depend on something else.
I spelled that wrong. I added a syllable. You can't talk to me right now. She knows what dependent. What does it mean?
You can't do anything without someone else.
Right. So if you have a 3-year-old, is that kid independent or dependent?
Dependent.
Dependent. Can they make their own food, take themselves to the doctor?
No.
No. Get a job?
No.
No. They are dependent, much like these clauses. So if I have one 3-year-old in the room, that kid can't survive on its own all by itself, right? I can't leave that kid alone for a week. I can leave you alone for a week. I can't leave a 3-year-old alone. How about if I have 10 3-year-olds in the room? Can I leave?
No.
No. Doesn't matter
Even
how
worse.
many of them there are. What do you have to have in that room?
An adult.
You have to have
Somebody
an
who's
adult, somebody
independent.
who is independent. Or those dependents are not going to make it. They're not going to survive, right? So it means the same thing. You can have dependent clauses all day long. But unless you have an independent clause, it's not going to survive. It won't be a sentence. So I have this dependent clause. I have this dependent clause. Yeah, so I have 2. And I have one dependent. It doesn't matter how many dependents I have. It's not going to make any sense without the independent, okay? So be careful with that. Sometimes people write these really long fragments, but it's just a bunch of dependent clauses without ever having an independent clause. So that can be a problem. Another thing about these dependent clauses and these words that make them dependent, you can kind of cross off the word or cover it. Now what do I have? It is raining and I left my umbrella at home in the garage, which I often do so that it will dry out. Would that be a complete sentence now, if I got rid of the because? Could I put a period over here after out? Yeah, now it's a complete sentence. These words make them dependent. They make them, another word for that is subordinate. Subordinate. What does subordinate mean? Lesser, it's below, it's beneath, right? Submarines go underwater, subways are underground. Sub means below. What part of this is the most important part? No, that's sub.
I will stay inside.
This is the important part. The complete sentence is important. Everything else is subordinate. It's dependent, it's subordinate. It's not as important as the main independent clause. Okay? So you want to know that when you're writing, because you want this to be the main thing that gets across, but sometimes you want those kind of extra things. I like to use my subordinate dependent clauses to soften independent clauses so they don't sound so abrupt or mean. Sometimes I want to do, sometimes I don't. But if I wanted to say, I might start a comment with, although you have some good supporting ideas, comma, they need to be supported more fully. Although you have some good general ideas, comma, they need more details. What's the more important part of that sentence? They need more details, not the although. That just kind of brings you to the more important thing of what you need. Okay? So that's what I mean about softening it. And you can flip it around too. Here's what happens. Sometimes we write sentences, all our sentences the same way. And there's no variety in your sentences. And it's just, I mean, you would never do this. It is raining, period. I left my umbrella at home, period. It's in the garage, period. I do that a lot, period. I want it to dry out, period. I will stay inside, period. Would you write like that? No. Because that's just a bunch of independent clauses, but it's choppy. It's childish, right? It's unsophisticated. It's not elegant at all. You want to combine things. You want to sometimes have, a less important thing with a more important thing. Sometimes you want two important things to be balanced, which would make them co-equal coordinate. And we'll look at those when we get to run-ons in a minute. But you want to mix it up sometimes. You want to start with your dependent and end with your independent. Sometimes you want to flip that. Sometimes you want that quick independent clause all by itself, a nice short sentence, like hopefully your topic sentence for the paragraph you're going to show me in a little bit. Hopefully you started with something short and sweet, like by following my foolproof process, you can get out of a speeding ticket scot-free, whatever it is. By the way, if you started your topic sentence with the word how to, you wrote a fragment. Is there a subject? How to break up with someone. Is there a subject in that sentence? Is there a verb? How to break up with someone. Is there a verb? The verb in a sentence can never be the to form. So you'd have a fragment if you wrote that as a topic sentence. Just saying, so you can fix that when we get to that. All right, so you have the handout. Let's take a look at some of these. In the introductory activity, again, because I could not sleep. Is that okay? Because I could not sleep, I turned on my light in red. What do you guys think? What do you think? Because I could not sleep, period. I turned on my light in red, period. Is that good like it is?
No.
No. What do we want to do, perhaps? Comma after sleep. Good. If the fragment, the independent word group comes at the beginning, use a comma to separate it from the complete sentence. If you flip it, you don't need a comma. So if you say, I will stay inside because, you don't need a comma before because. If it's at the end, it's all one thing. Yeah. That's just a weird grammar point. There it is. Could you flip it and say, I turned on my light in red because I could not sleep? Yes. And then there would be no comma, just make it a small word. Number 2. Calling his dog's name, Todd walked up and down the street. What do you think?
We switched.
So tell me how to do it with punctuation and stuff. Take off the period after name. So how would that sound? can flip it and do that. Or could you put a comma after name? Yeah. Calling his dog's name, comma, Todd walked up and down the street. That's a fine way to add some variety, starting with an ing clause. Can that be the verb, by the way, calling? Can that be the verb of the sentence? Remember, an ing verb is not by itself ever the verb of the sentence. It has to be was calling, were calling, whatever. This can't be the verb. Is there a subject to that first part, calling his dog's name? No. It doesn't say who's doing anything, right? But you would never say he calling, Tom calling. It's like Todd, whatever his name is, Todd calling. No, Todd is calling, was calling. So we'll work on those two. And that's another kind of fragment.
Can't you start that off with he's?
Yeah, if you had the he and the is, now you have a subject and the correct part of the verb. Complete sentence. But this one doesn't. Okay. My little sister will eat anything, period, except meat, vegetables, and fruit. Is that first thing a complete sentence? My little sister will eat anything.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, what's the subject?
Little sister.
Sister, the verb?
Will.
Will eat. Good. What about the second thing, except meat, vegetables, and fruit? Does it have a subject?
No.
No. Does it have a verb?
No.
Yeah, it's an added detail. It's like, no, that's not a sentence. You can't just like throw stuff down like that. What would you do to fix it?
Just a comma.
You don't even need the comma, yeah. Just get rid of the period, make it a small e, and be fine. How about 4? The reporter turned on her laptop, period, then began to type quickly. Is that okay? Is that okay? Let's look at it. The reporter turned on her laptop. What's the subject? Verb.
Turn.
Good. Complete sentence?
Yes.
Yes. The second one. Then begin to type quickly. Subject? There's no subject.
Fragment.
Every sentence has to have its own subject that you can circle or underline or somehow. What should the subject be? Who did something? Who began to type quickly? Good. So how do we want to say then the reporter? We just say the reporter turned on her laptop, period. Then the reporter began to type quickly. How would you do it? There's a couple ways you can do it. And then you can make it one sentence.
Then you should start the phrase with then.
Say it again.
Because you start the phrase with then.
If you, well, yeah, you could.
just put then in the middle.
Right, and get rid of the period, right? Make a small t, right, that's fine. You can make it its own sentence, how could you do that? What if you look at me like it's written on my forehead? I had the answer on my forehead. What would you say? You wanted to make that second sentence its own sentence. Why? Yeah, you don't even need the comma, but what if you wanted to make, what if you wanted to keep the period for some reason, right?
Yeah.
And then you wanted the then began thing?
And then.
You can add she.
That's it, just add the subject she, then she. I'm glad you guys don't want to, because you're right, it would be kind of short and choppy, and you can do better than
You can just do it without comma or period.
that. Yeah, just go straight through.
And then.
The reporter turned on a laptop, then began to type quickly, period.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. All right, let's try some more. On the next page, we have, I put some of the dependent words up here, words that, these have like a fancy name too, they're like adverbial, and I forget what they're called, but I put a bunch of them, but there's more, and they're in this box. Can you start a sentence, not a question, can you start a sentence with the word which? Think about it.
Yes.
Can you start a sentence, give me a sentence that starts with the word which?
Which way would you like to
That's a
go?
question.
That's still a sentence,
No, but I
isn't
said
it?
not a question.
Oh.
A declarative statement, a sentence. Can you start a sentence with the word which? Think about it. Give me one, Ethan. That's not a question.
which will be.
You can't. It'll be a fragment every time. Questions, yeah, they're for questions.
Which is a question what?
It is. So if you put something like, we're having a test. Which is awesome. Is that a sentence?
No.
No.
No,
No.
that's a
No.
fragment.
It's a fragment. You can't start with which, okay? So you can get rid of the period, make that small w. Or you could go it is. Now I added a subject, right? Because this is not a subject, it's not a noun or a pronoun. It is awesome. Then you can do it, but the which makes it a fragment. Okay. And you can't add a complete sentence to it. It just doesn't, like afterwards, you can't add a complete sentence. It doesn't make sense. Right? Which is awesome because it's like, no, now you get another fragment, right? So you can't really start with it. You can end with it, you just can't start with it. All right. Other ones that mess people up in here, let me see. Sometimes until or unless. But we'll see. We'll see which ones mess us up as we do this activity. So let's look at page 429 before we get to the activity. Let's look at, oh yeah, the way this chapter does it, like we saw a minute ago, it breaks fragments into 4 different kinds. You don't have to know the kinds. I'm never going to say, what are the 4 kinds of fragments? You just have to know a fragment's a fragment. Okay. But breaking it down is kind of a good idea. So on page 429, after I learned the price of new cars, period, I decided to keep my old pickup. Come on up. What makes that a fragment? Does it have a subject?
429.
Yeah, just the next page. We have this page, and then just flip it and you get this one. Does it have a subject? After I learned the price of new cars. I. And the verb? Learn. Does it express a complete thought? No. See, that's the thing. That's where it gets a little tricky. After I learned the price of new cars, you need the what happened after. If it is raining, is that a complete sentence? Because you need the then. The if and the then have to be in the same sentence.
That's what the super is something.
Right, because it just kind of leaves you hanging. It's not a complete
When you
thought.
read, that's what the super is something.
Yeah, right. And you need the resolution of that, right, in the same sentence. So that's why your teachers would have you read stuff out loud too. Lots of reasons, but one of the reasons, you can hear fragments. If it doesn't come to a stop and you're expecting more, probably a fragment. So after I learned the price of new cars, yeah, then what happened? Right, you need the rest of that. Because it is cold outside, yeah, so what do we do? Well, coat. Okay, so what happened after I learned the price of new cars? Good, let's make it all in one sentence. The fragment's at the beginning, so what do we have to do? Take out the period. Do I need a comma? Fragment's at the beginning. It's a rule. If the fragment's at the beginning, yes, you put a comma to separate it from the complete sentence. If it's after, if you flipped it and you said, I decided to keep my old pickup after I learned the price of new cars, you don't put a comma. Okay, so it depends on where the fragment is. All right, let's look at the next one. My daughter refused to stop smoking, period, unless I quit also. It's kind of further down on the page. Unless makes it a fragment, okay? Unless I quit also, like where's the rest of it? What's the unless what? So would you put a comma after smoking? No, because the fragment's at the end. Okay. I just gave it to you. Did? Now you have two. I promise.
Okay, then yeah, I have it. I know it was that one.
Yep. He made an early appointment, period, which he did not intend to keep. Which he did not intend to keep. It's a fragment, like I said, you can't jump to it. So get rid of the period and make it a small w. Go back up to after I learned the price of new cars. Go back to that example. Take your index finger, cover the word after. Now what do you have? What do you have? Period. I decided to get my old pickup, period. Is that correct?
No.
If you cover the word after? Yeah, now it's two complete sentences. That's what I was saying. Those words make things a fragment. Okay? You can get rid of the dependent word and it's fine. But we like to have them. They kind of show us things. They're almost like transitions, right? Kind of help clarify things. All right, let's do some of these together. Now, this is a weird handout because, as you know, I've been copying the book for you. And this particular copy of the book, I guess, had been written on. So, sadly, there's some writing on some of these. But, fun fact, they're not always right. So we have to go through and figure out if this person did it correctly. So let's look at number 1 on this activity 2, the bottom of page 431. Oh, the good news, by the way, is I'm getting the 11th edition student version that doesn't have all the teacher answers in it. And I'll just make copies and give it to you as we go. So you don't have to buy a book, but you know, you're getting the book for free, basically, which is fine. Because you can't get the book anymore. It's too late in the semester to try to buy it. So I'll just have it for you. But I have to wait for the publisher to send me this student version, which is coming, I don't know, end of this week, beginning of next week. But it's okay, we have things to do. But, so there you go. I saved you $100 and something. Okay, so number 1, who wants to try it? I'll take a volunteer who feels pretty good about fragments. Yes. Bottom of the page where it says, when a flock of birds is resting in the trees, one always acts as a lookout. It will warn the others of possible danger. Anything wrong with that? What do you guys think about that passage? Are you answering? Well, I'm wondering if it's correct as it is. When a flock of birds is resting, number 1 at the bottom. I'm way down at the bottom, Jules.
Oh.
Activity 2?
Okay, thank you.
No, no problem. I know the handout's goofy. What do we think? Stephanie, what do you think?
Say we have to add a comma.
Where?
After trees.
Yes, after trees. The when makes it a fragment. It's a dependent word. So you need to know what happens when in the same sentence. You need to finish that thought. When a flock of birds is resting in the trees, comma, one always acts as a lookout because we have the fragment at the beginning. If we flipped it, it would be hard to read, but okay. One always acts as a lookout when a flock of birds is resting in the trees. There would be no comma. Let's try number 2. By the way, the test on fragments looks a lot like that. I'll have 3 sentences. You pick the fragment and you fix that. So number 2. What do we think? What do you think? Bill always turns on the radio in the morning to hear.
The first one,
Bill always turns on the radio in the morning to hear the news.
I'm gonna come out after even.
You don't actually need the comma. Yeah. You found it, but you don't need the comma. Just so you know, because it's at the end. Is the first one a fragment? Bill always turns on the radio in the morning to hear the news. That's a complete sentence. Right? That's fine.
Yeah.
He wants to get an update on world events. Fine. Before he gets on with his day.
The last one,
That's the fragment, right?
Yes.
It's like, ugh, it's kind of abrupt, it's like, wait, where's the rest of that? So how do we fix it, cause it's at the end? Make a what? Get rid of the period, make it a small
Yes.
b, that's all you gotta do. Okay, alright, let's look at the next one. Although Mr. Simon is over 80 years old, oh yeah, they fixed this one for us. But did they do that correctly? Comma lowercase h. That's correct, where this person corrected it. Although Mr., cause it's this, right? It's at the beginning. Although Mr. Simon is over 80 years old, comma, he walks briskly to work every day, period. He seems like a much younger man since he is so active. Do you need that comma?
No.
They messed that one up. So no comma, just a lowercase s. Now they messed up number 4 big time. Not big time, but they messed it up. So what do you guys think? I think you're smarter than the person who did this activity. Well, they did mess it up. Big time. Canadian football is similar to football played in the United States. Is that a complete sentence?
Yes.
The first one is. The first one's okay. What about, although in Canada the field is 110 yards long? That's a fragment. What about while in the United States it is 100 yards long? Is that a complete sentence? No. Can you just attach 2 fragments and have a complete sentence?
No.
That's like leaving 2 3-year-olds in the room. You can't do that. What do you have to have? You need an adult. You need an independent clause. This doesn't, the way this person corrected it by sticking the 2 fragments together, still a fragment. So how can we fix that?
Just take off the fragment and leave it like that.
I think I would get rid of one of those dependent words.
So although,
I'd get rid of although.
Yeah.
I would say, Canadian football is similar to football played in the United States, period. In Canada, the field is 110 yards long, while in the United States, it is 100 yards long. That's what I would do. Or, although in Canada, the field is 110 yards long, comma, in the United States, it is 100 yards long. Because once you get rid of the while, you have a complete sentence. Right? Okay, so don't stick fragments together and think it'll make a complete sentence. All right, number 5. What do we think? That was kind of easy. Do you agree with the correction this person made?
No.
I mean, I sort of agree. Person gets half credit. What do we think?
they could have left the comma.
No, when it's at the end like
First
that,
one.
you don't need the comma.
Okay.
So if you keep the comma, it's like, you know, a misdemeanor. But if you keep the period, it's a felony. So it's not the worst thing to have a comma. Like that period it's an egregious, gross, horrible mistake. A comma is just like, nah, it's a little mistake because it's at the end. But what about which made it hard to pay all my bills this week? What do you think about that?
It could have been a comma instead of a period before it.
You don't even need a comma. Yeah, but that's a fragment, isn't it?
So I just take off which.
And you have to say it, I think. Right? Because you can't just say made it hard to pay. It made it hard. You have to add a subject.
We'll take out which and make it it.
You could. You can make it its own sentence like that. Or like you said, Gloria, you can get rid of that period after snowstorm. You can make it all one sentence. Last week I missed work twice because of a snowstorm, which made it hard to pay all my bills this week. All one sentence. Or, last week I missed work twice because of a snowstorm, period. It made it hard, or that made it hard to pay all my bills this week. Okay, so there's a couple of ways you can fix it. All right, let's look at the ing and to fragments. Remember, the verb of a sentence, right, is never the ing form by itself, and it's never the to form, the infinitive. So if you start with one of these words, and you think it's the verb, It can't be. It's the rule. It cannot be the verb of the sentence if it's an ing word by itself or that form with the to, the infinitive form. So when you say something like this first one, I spent almost 2 hours on the phone yesterday trying to find a garage to repair my car. Trying, can that be the verb of the sentence? No, because you need another word to go with it. To find, is that the subject? I mean the subject, the verb? It can't be, it's the to form. To repair also can't be the verb. Okay, so there's no verb. Is there a subject? What's the subject in that second sentence? What is it?
Car.
What did the car do?
Needs repair.
That's not what the sentence is saying though. How should this be worded and punctuated? There's a couple of ways you can fix this one. Well, there's always a couple of ways you can fix fragments. What do you think? Who was trying to find a garage in this sentence? What's the subject? I. So how can we make that clear? You can't say I trying. You wouldn't just add the word I trying to find unless you're a caveman, right? I was, you need the was. You could do that. You could say, I spent almost 2 hours on the phone yesterday, period. I was trying to find. You need the was though. Or, what else could you do? Can you just get rid of the period? Just get rid of the period. You can attach the fragment to an independent clause, right? Something that has a subject and a verb. And then you're all set, because now the sentence has a subject and a verb. All right, let's look at some more of these. Maggie was at first happy with the used SUV she bought from a neighbor, not realizing until a week later that the vehicle averaged just 9 miles per gallon of gas. Why is that second one a fragment? And that's okay. Like, that's not what makes it a fragment. But you're right, it's over there. Who not realizing?
You put a she.
She not realizing?
She. No, wait, hold up.
You gotta fix it.
Me.
Well, you can't say me not realizing.
She was.
She was not realizing? Wait, stop. Think about it. You wouldn't say her not realizing. I'm surrounded by cave people. Oh my God. Her not realize. Like you not know. What? She had not or she did not realize. You gotta change the verb so it works, right? That's what I mean about the INGs. They can't be the verb of the sentence. So Maggie was at first happy with the used SUV she bought from a neighbor, period. She did not realize until a week later. Or, and that makes it a separate sentence, which is fine. You add the subject and the right part of the verb. Or, what else could you do?
If you were to add a comma, would it be?
That would be fine.
Okay.
Yep, after neighbor, make it a small n. Fine. Now this last example, in the book, or the handout, the author is saying that being is an ing word and that that's the problem. They call it an ing mistake. I call it a verb error, to be honest, because you're changing the whole verb. So he looked forward to the study period at school, period. It being the only time he could sit unbothered and dream about his future. Is that the correct word to use? It being? What should it be? Okay, what? Would you word it that way? It being? This being Wednesday. It's. That's why I call it a verb problem. I think it's just the wrong verb. It was the only time. Okay. But when you use being, you need a helping verb, and you would not use it by itself. It's just goofy. All right. 2 fragments. Words that, fragments that start with the 2-word group can't be the verb of the sentence at the bottom of that same page. I plan on working overtime, period, to get this job finished, period. Otherwise, my boss may get angry at me. Which one of those is the fragment? To get this job finished. Is there a subject?
No.
No. Is there a verb? No, because the to can't be the verb of the sentence, all right? So how can we fix it? You don't even need a comma. I plan on working overtime to get this job finished, get rid of the period, lowercase t, all one sentence, right? That's the only way I would fix this one. Let's look at the next one. Oh, okay. Actually, this is, I think, yeah, let's do the first one. We can do this activity. Activity 3 on page 434. Do you see it? Establishing a research laboratory in Menlo Park, New Jersey, 1876. Edison set the standard for modern industrial research. How can we fix it? What's the fragment in this one? Yes. Why? What's missing there? Establishing a research laboratory in Menlo Park. What's the subject? There is no subject. And the verb can't be, right? You can't say he establishing. Doesn't make sense. So how can we fix this?
Take off the period.
Yeah, take out the period after 1876, after that parenthetical date. Put a comma. You'll be fine. If you flipped it, you don't need the comma. How about number 2? He works 10 hours a day, then going to class for 2.5 hours. It is no wonder he writes fragments. Which one of those is the fragment? Yeah, then going. There's no subject, so how can we fix that? Take out the period after day. And you fix going, then going. It doesn't match. Then goes to class, right? Make that clear. And number 3, Charlotte loved the classic movie Gone with the Wind, but Clyde hated it. His chief objection being that it lasted 4 hours. So how do we fix that one? His chief objection being? No, his chief objection, you don't use being that way. Was. All right, so I'm gonna have you do activity 4 on your own for Monday. 4. You get some more practice in that. I wanna go down to the next kind of fragment. So if you turn to page 435, the next kind of fragment that they talk about is added detail fragments. That's just when you add something without a subject or a verb. I would add the word like to this box. We use the word like to mean for example, don't we? I watch several shows on Hulu, like Justified, Only Murders in the Building, and can I just say that? Like Only Murders in the Building, Justified, whatever my third show is. No, I need subject and verb. So I would add the word like to that. So the example they give us, I love to cook and eat Italian food, especially spaghetti and lasagna. I make everything from scratch. Which of those is the fragment? Right. No subject, no verb. How would we fix it? Take out the period. Take out the period. And you would be fine. All right. I'm going to have you guys, I think these are kind of easy. So I'm going to have you do activity 5, but let's look at example 2 before we do that. The class often starts late, period. For example, yesterday at 9:15 instead of at 9 sharp. Today the class started at 5 after 9. Is there a fragment in there? Yes, the for example thing. What do we need? Does it have a subject? What's the subject? It should be, but that's not in that sentence, right? There's nothing in the for example sentence that you could underline that would indicate a subject.
Take the period out.
I would take the period out. Yes, you can put a comma. Or you could add the subject and verb. For example, it started yesterday at, then it would be fine, right? How about example 3? He failed a number of courses before he earned his degree. Among them, English 1, economics, and general biology. What do we need to do to fix that? Or how would you fix that? There's 2 ways, at least. It doesn't have a subject, it doesn't have a verb, so we can add it to something that has a subject and verb. Like what? Like the sentence before it would work, right? And if you wanted to add a subject and verb of its own, how would that go? What's the subject? He, what did he do? He failed. Among them, he failed English 1, economics, and general biology. And that would be fine. Okay. Let's look at the last kind now. By the way, these activities I'm writing down, when you do them in the packet, you don't have to rewrite the whole thing. Just make the changes where they would go. Okay. You don't have to rewrite all of them. Missing subject fragments. Well, that's pretty easy, because what do you have to do? It's missing a subject. Just add one in there, or combine it with something that has a subject, right? So, the truck skidded on the rain-slick highway, period, but missed a telephone pole on the side of the road. Which of those is the fragment, the first one or the second one? I'm on page 438 at the top, missing subject fragment. Which of those is the fragment? 438? Missing subject fragments? The truck skidded on the rain-slick highway, but missed a telephone pole on the side of the road. Which of those is the fragment?
Take out the period, add a comma, then
You don't actually need a comma in this case. Okay. When you put comma with the word but, it's when there's a complete sentence on both sides. So if you added the word it, but it missed, right? You'd have a complete sentence, right? And you could put a comma before the but. But in this case, because there's no complete sentence after. How about the second one? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So the but thing is interesting because remember how I said these are subordinating conjunctions, right? The words and, but, or, nor, or. We're gonna do this in detail on Monday. So, and yet, these guys are coordinating conjunctions. They don't make one of the sentences less important, they make them they make them equal. So when you use one of these to separate 2 complete sentences, you use a comma. But if it's incomplete, if it's a complete plus an incomplete, and you use one of these words, no comma. So if you say, she went to the band, complete sentence, right? Complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And withdrew money. Is that a complete sentence? No, no comma. If I add she, complete sentence? And that works that way with but also. And or and or and or. Okay, so that's the rule on that. And so what we're gonna do on Monday, just so I give you a little preview. Is that correct? Need this over here, so I do too much space there. Is that correct? What do I have a complete sentence? I did a minute ago, you told me I did. Change that part. Is that a complete sentence?
No.
She withdrew money? Subject, verb, expressive, thought? I think it is. It's short.
It is wrong.
Yeah. So how do I, but you know that's not right, right? So what do I need to do to fix it?
And
Yeah, comma and like I did. Can I just put a comma? Can I do this?
yes, because
Yeah, because it's two complete thoughts.
Do we separate two complete sentences with a comma? No, we separate incompletes and completes with commas. A comma alone is never enough to separate two complete sentences. You've got to add one of these, like you said.
And
Okay. Notice those are not these. You can't say she went to the bank, comma, where or when she was promoted. It wouldn't make sense, but you know what I mean. That would make it a dependent clause, and then the comma's okay. But not when they're two complete sentences. That's, yeah, run-on stuff for Monday.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When it's two different complete sentences, is that where you would be able to use a semicolon?
Not in my world.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Here's what, and I'll tell you why. People think that semicolons and commas are the same, but they're not. Semicolons and periods are the same. Your camera's goofy. All right, so let's look at the missing subject fragments. We looked at, we did that one? Oh yeah, we did that one.
yeah.
Okay, good. So what I want you to do is activity 7 also. And then I would like you to also do review tests 2. Review 2 and I think 3. Yeah. This is what 4 looks like. No, just 2 and 3. Now, the person who tried to do review test 3, remember, we don't know if they're right. They just kind of white out the answer. But yeah, give that a look. Now, all right, so you get it? We know what we're doing? We understand fragments a little bit better? Okay, good. Because now I want to go over your process paragraphs. If you do not have your process paragraph, just like, I don't know, go sit in a corner or something because I can't help you. I'm not punishing you, I just can't do anything with you, right? So, if you if you have your process paragraph with you, in some way, shape, or form, hold it up. I'm going to put you in groups of 3.
I'll send it to,
Yeah, but I can't open it. I can't open it. Okay. So, Emily, are yours? Okay, look, somebody can read it. You have them? Okay. So why don't you go back there and that'll be a group of 3. Sean, put your yours here. You read yours on your phone or something, on your email, or you can get it, you can go print it, whatever it may be. Gloria, do you have one? You have yours? No? You have yours? Come on up here. You want to bring that here? Right. Keandra, come up here. And you can work with Gloria and Sean. So if you would come here, that'd be great. No. Yes. No, you have it. You don't have yours. You guys have one? Okay, so that's 2. And Julie, you get yours. So here's what you're gonna do. Kind of sit in a little bit of a circle so you're facing each other. Hold up your paper or your